Good evening. Looks like we're ready to start. I'm going to read exactly what it says on here because that's how we do it. Welcome, and thank you for coming to tonight's candidate forum for the Goodhue County Sheriff and County Attorney Forum. My name is Diane Eisenbry, and I'm a member of the Red Wing League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters of Red Wing is a nonpartisan organization that promotes the active and informed involvement of citizens in the voting process. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose political parties or individual candidates. The League of Women Voters of Red Wing sponsor candidate forums to give voters the opportunity to hear and compare candidates' stands on issues. Opinions expressed are those of the candidates and not of the Red Wing League. Each candidate will have the following time limits: 1.5 minutes for the opening statement and for a closing statement. Get that? Okay. 1.5 minutes. Candidates' answers to each question will also be timed at 1.5 minutes. The timekeeper, these two people right up here, will hold up a 30-second card and then a stop card to remind each candidate of their response time remaining. This event is being broadcast live, up there, on Red Wing's Channel 6 in its entirety without editing and will be available for viewing later. Consult the Channel 6 schedule for viewing times. Because this event is being photographed, recorded, and broadcasted, by entering this event space or remaining at this event, you consent to being photographed or recorded. Please see the crowd release poster displayed by the entry door for more information. If you do not wish to be recorded or photographed, please do not remain at this event. The League of Women Voters Red Wing recognizes that personal devices like cell phones, cameras, and video recorders are commonplace. We ask that attendees silence personal devices. So now's the time. Turn your phone off. We also require that all attendees do not record this event. Any use of personal devices must not disrupt or distract others or obstruct the view of others. Any person who records this event or causes a distraction, disruption, or obstruction may be asked to leave or may be escorted from the event. Now, tonight, we have our moderators, Catherine Reinders over here, and Barb Ekstrand, and we'll begin the forum.
Again, welcome, and thank you for coming to tonight's candidate forum for Goodhue County Sheriff and Goodhue County Attorney. As our introducer mentioned, my name is Catherine Reinders. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters Red Wing, and assisting me tonight is Barb Ekstrand, also a member of the League of Women Voters Red Wing. The candidates will be answering questions that they have not seen in advance. You, the audience, will be offered paper and note cards to submit your questions. When you have questions, please raise them high and wave them so that a league member can pick them up. All questions will be screened by a neutral league committee. Because we have candidates for 2 county offices tonight, you may rate on your question if it is meant for the sheriff or attorney office if you like. However, all 3 candidates may respond if it is relevant to both offices. You may also write on your question if it is meant for all 3 candidates. Questions will not be asked if they are illegible, on personal matters unrelated to the elective office, unclear, inappropriately hostile, or submitted for the purpose of making a statement rather than gaining information. We are also asking, in addition to not videotaping, that you do not live stream this forum. Thank you for that. The candidates have been given the agenda in advance of this forum and have agreed to the following. Each candidate will be addressed by first name only after they are introduced. Each candidate will give an opening and closing statement. Candidates will then answer questions in rotation within the stated time limit of 1.5 minutes. And this will be interesting to keep it in rotation with 2 different offices, and I've asked the candidates to let me know if I don't keep to that. I am now going to ask Marty Kelly, candidate for County Sheriff, to make his opening statement. Marty.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for having this and everybody that came. Quick overview of who Marty is. I'm a 30-year veteran of the Red Wing Police Department. I'm married to Mary of 28 years. We live in Hay Creek Township and have 5 children, all of whom are in college right now. My education started in 1984 at Mankato State. I graduated in 1988 with a bachelor's degree in law enforcement with a minor in psychology. After college, I took a skills program in Alexandria and graduated from that and began my career in 1989 with the Red Wing PD as a patrolman. Subsequently, I was promoted to I was the first school liaison officer at the time Red Wing High School built in 1995. 4 years after that, I went back on the patrol and was subsequently promoted to patrol sergeant, which I proudly serve in that position today. During my career, I've had an opportunity to do many things. One of my favorites was being on the SWAT team for Goodhue County. I've been a crisis negotiator, bike patrol officer, bike patrol supervisor, a field training officer, which is training our new people, and now a field training supervisor. Very fortunate to be able to influence our young people. I also volunteer at a lot of places. I have to stop.
Thank you, Marty. Sorry,
we'll get to it later,
finish.
maybe.
Next, we'll hear from Paul Gielau, also candidate for County Sheriff. Paul?
Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. My name is Paul Gielau. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 33 years. I first started as a jailer dispatcher. I worked in our patrol division for 20 years. 13 of those I was a supervisor. I worked in investigations for 6 years, mostly working narcotics. And for the last 4 years, I've been part of the Sheriff's Administration as a patrol commander. As a patrol commander, I oversee 32 sworn deputies in our patrol division, in our water patrol division, and in our bailiff civil transport division. I also work closely with the sheriff, our chief deputy, and our accountant in administering a budget. I hate to say this number, but it is $13 million. I also took part in the last year and a half, probably, on a steering committee looking at starting a drug court in Goodhue County. We've worked very hard at this, and we did not get approved during our first grant, and we've gone to training, additional training. We applied for a grant again, and I am thrilled tonight to announce that yesterday we were awarded $500,000 for a drug treatment court for the next 4 years in Goodhue County. I think this will be a great thing. After working narcotics, I've seen what narcotics do to our children, to our families, and this treatment court, we have to try something, and I believe this treatment court will be a very good thing for Goodhue County.
Thank you, Paul. Next, Steve O'Keefe, candidate for County Attorney, will make his opening statement.
Yes, and thank you for having me here tonight. Again, my name is Steve O'Keefe, and I am a candidate for the office of Goodhue County Attorney. My wife Elaine and I have lived in Goodhue County since 1994. We have 3 children, all of whom graduated from Red Wing High School. Community service has been a very important part of our lives here in Red Wing. I have served on numerous boards and committee during our time here, including Goodhue Wabasha Sexual Assault Services, United Way, the YMCA, and I've served on the Red Wing School Board. I currently serve on the Red Wing Environmental Learning Center, as well as the YMCA Board of Trustees. I'm a graduate of St. John's University up in Collegeville, Minnesota, and Hamline University School of Law. I have worked as an assistant in Goodhue County for over 25 years. During that time, I have worked in just about every area of law that we practice, including criminal prosecutions, juveniles, child protection, data practices, open meetings, contracts, as well as general municipal law. I have also worked with just about every department in the county and many outside agencies that we work with. I would like to be your next county attorney because I truly enjoy the work that I do, and I would like to continue doing that work at a higher level. I find it challenging, interesting, and most of all, it's meaningful work. At its root is public service, and that is something that's been very important to me in my life, and it also is something that motivates me to do my best every day. Again, thank you for having me here, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Our first question will be addressed to Paul, and I believe this is applicable to both offices, but you can decide, Steve. How do you describe your leadership style, Paul?
Well, I think my leadership style is I don't ask my people to work for me. I ask our employees to work with me. I believe in mentoring. I've been around, again, like I said earlier, for 33 years, so I've gained a lot of knowledge. I've learned from mistakes that I made during my career, and I enjoy working with our young deputies, both men and women, to mentor them, to try to prevent them from making some of the same mistakes in their careers.
Thank you. Steve, do you care to address that?
Certainly. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm kind of a quiet person in public, and so I tend to lead more by example. You know, as the head of the office, I think it's my responsibility to set the tone of the office, set the example of how I want people to perform in the office, and I need to live by those expectations that I have first and foremost. If I were to describe my other leadership style, it's probably calm, collaborative, supportive, and positive. I try to be a positive person, motivate people to do their best, give them the tools that they need to do their work, and let them do it.
Thank you. Marty?
Thank you. Excuse me. Well, this position is actually a leadership position, and leadership to me and how I manage that is leadership is a relationship building. You need to build relationships with your fellow officers, your fellow administrators, and foster those relationships and have people. So I wouldn't ask anybody to do something I wouldn't do. I'm a boots on the ground guy. I've been there for 30 years. I know what goes on out in the streets. I know what's effective and what's not in law enforcement, and I can share that with our people because I've done all of it. I've seen pretty much everything there is to see. So it's just building those relationships with everybody, having people have a voice at the table. Making decisions with them and not just by yourself.
Thank you. The next question is directed to the County Attorney Office. Steve, the current County Attorney has been in office for many years. This is tough. What will you do differently than he did? What changes will you make?
Well, first of all, the current county attorney, Mr. Betcher, has been a fantastic mentor to me, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for his patience and encouragement and giving me the opportunities that I have over the year. I didn't choose to run for county attorney because I wanted to change things, that I had a huge agenda to change things, but obviously I'm a different person, and so there will be some things that I will do differently. Going into it, I'm anticipating talking to people that we do business with, our law enforcement partners, county administration, chiefs of police, find out what their concerns are with regard to our office and see how we can better serve them. That would be my agenda, is to serve our community and the people we work with better, and I need to hear from them first before I can do that.
Thank you. I am going to ask this question of Paul and then Marty. What changes will you make in the county sheriff's office?
Well, I think one of the first changes that I would have to do is with the retirement of Sheriff McNerlin and current Sheriff Chris Johnson retiring also at the end of the year, one big change that we're going to make is I need to identify future leaders of the Sheriff's Office that want to be future leaders and bring those into our administrative positions and mentor them, give them the support they need through training and give them experience so that they can be leaders in the future. I don't see any big changes in the Sheriff's Office. I've had a very good career there. Sheriff Whipperling, Sheriff Elbers, Sheriff McNerlin, now Sheriff Johnson. They've all been great leaders. They've taught me things. They've set up our department to run very well. We run at a high level, and I don't see any major changes that we need to make. Now we'll sit down and listen to our employees, and there are things that can be tweaked, and we'll listen to our employees for their ideas, and then we'll sit down and see if we need to implement a lot of changes.
Thank you. Marty?
Well, administratively, regardless of the outcome of this election, there's big change is going to happen at the top. 4 out of the 6 top administrators are leaving their positions. So we do need to identify people to fill those positions fairly soon. And change is hard. In 1987, Forrest Whipperling came to this department from a different department, from the Red Wing Police Department. And everyone thought that he did a good job, and so do I. But 35 years has gone by, and law enforcement has changed. So we have to change with it. What those changes will be, I don't know right now, but I think small changes mean big changes. If you just treat people the way they want to be treated and support your staff, communication is big with me. So we need to communicate with the staff, see what their thoughts are and how we can improve.
Thank you. The next question is for the county sheriff candidates. What do you think the county government's relationship with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, should be? We'll begin with you, Marty.
Sure. Well, ICE is obviously a federal agency, and federal law, we are bound by, we have to follow the law, the rule of the law. If the federal government wants us to enforce one of their laws, I think we're obligated to do so. I understand, and this might come up with Paul, because it came up last time, where ICE asked to have a detainer on an individual in the jail, and it's policy now that they do not hold for ICE. I think that would just need to be looked at again. I don't know if I agree with it. After doing some research, maybe I do, but I think we do have to follow what the federal government is asking us at this point.
Thank you. Paul?
Our current policy, or the Sheriff's Association that all the sheriffs work with closely, they also have counsel. And most of the sheriffs in Minnesota do not honor ICE detainers if that is solely the purpose of having a person put in our jail. If there is a person in our jail that has criminal charges and then ICE puts a detainer on them, that's a different deal, and we hold then on the criminal charges. But when the criminal charges are done and that inmate is scheduled to be released, ICE knows that they're there. We notify ICE when they're going to be released, and we release the person either to ICE or they go out the door if ICE hasn't shown up. We do not hold anybody on an ICE detainer alone. I've worked closely, I think we got things pretty good now. I've worked closely with Hispanic Outreach and some meetings with the sheriff. And one thing that we also do with ICE and working with our Hispanics in town, we don't, on minor violations, we don't fingerprint them like anybody else. And because if they get fingerprinted, then they do become in the system, and then ICE sometimes puts a detainer on them. And again, we're going to release on that petty violation anyhow, so we just do not hold on ICE detainers alone.
Thank you. The next question is for the county attorney candidate. And we'll start with you, Steve. What is the county attorney's policy on when children are removed from the home due to suspected abuse or neglect? And is this an increasing problem?
We work very closely with public health, Goodhue County Health and Human Services. The decision to remove a child from a home really comes from them in coordination with law enforcement. We become involved after the child has been removed, and we file the legal paperwork necessary to maintain that child outside the home in a safe environment. What was the second part of that question? It was.
Is this an increasing problem?
I think it is an increasing problem, and I think Paul alluded to it in his opening comments about the growing issue of drug abuse and drug addiction. I think has a significant role in all of that. As we've seen our drug problem increase over the years, we've also seen our child protection problems increase as well. They're hand in hand, and that's one of the reasons why we did seek the grant for the drug court, and we're happy that we obtained that grant. We're hoping that that opportunity will allow us to kind of dig into that a little deeper, provide the tools necessary for families to reunify in a safe way.
Thank you. Do either Paul or Marty care to comment on this? If not, I'll go on to the next question. Fine, thank you. This is a question for the sheriff candidates. What is your concept of community involvement? And we will begin with Paul.
Well, I think, being involved in the community is important, especially in these days with the trouble some of the public has with law enforcement. One of the things that I encourage, we can't dictate it, but we encourage our deputies to live within the county, to be connected to their communities. Well, one way we do that is all our deputies have take-home squads, but which is a bonus for everybody, but if they choose to live outside of the county, they can't take that car home. And that does get a lot more people of our people that live within the county and the communities. Also, the take-home car policy, it allows. In the old days, deputies used to live in Red Wing because that's where we started and finished, our shifts. Now that we have deputies with assigned take-home vehicles, we have deputies in Pine Island, Zumbrota. We have them throughout the county. Another way to work that I work with the communities, I work closely with our townships and with our cities. We contract police in Wanamingo, Pine Island, Denison, and Belchester, and I just got done negotiating contracts. We did another 3-year extension with both the cities of Wanamingo and Pine Island to provide their law enforcement for the next 3 years. And we have a very good relationship with them. We've been policing Pine Island for 44 years, I believe.
Thank you. Marty?
Community involvement to me is having, personally, this is where I can get some of my opening statement on. Being involved, it is how it sounds, right? For 17 years, I was a volunteer football coach for our youth league. For 6 years, I was a volunteer baseball coach. I'm currently a 4-H volunteer with the VESA 4-H club. And for the last several years, I've volunteered at the Goodhue County Fair. And then again, my wife and I were foster parents for Goodhue County for several years as well. So being involved, giving back to the community, it's kind of my roots, because I take that on the beat with me. And I told you earlier, I have 30 years of boots on the ground service to the citizens of Red Wing. And when I mean boots on the ground, that's really what I mean. I don't drive in the car for 12 hours a day. I get out, I walk through businesses, I walk neighborhoods, I talk to people, I meet people, and build those relationships, which you're going to hear me say a lot tonight, because our business is building relationships and having citizens be engaged with us. I'm very community-oriented, and that's what I'm going to encourage our deputies to do. They can get out of the car and stop on County 9 and visit with the guy who's driving a combine. I mean, we need to get out and engage. We can't sit in the car for 12 hours on a shift. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a question for all three of you. What, and I will state it differently, and we will start with Marty. What is the number one pressing issue facing the Goodhue County Sheriff's Department?
Well, the number one issue, in my opinion, is communication with staff and citizens as a whole. I've been told that the meetings, we need to have meetings with our line staff. We need to have meetings with patrolmen. That just hasn't been happening. And when we have our informed officers, then they can be more effective out on the road. The other issue that I see and what I've experienced in my career is that we have to take care of the people who take care of us. Okay, we need to give them the tools, the training, the support that they need to be able to be effective in their job. If they're not effective in their job, they're not helping anyone out here. So that's my number one priority at this point, and give them the support so they can help you guys.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Paul.
Can you repeat the question
Sure.
again, please? Thank you.
What is the number one most pressing issue facing the Goodhue County Sheriff's Department?
I think, again, as I've said earlier, and I'll maintain that, our office runs very effectively. We do have communication with our employees. We have meetings when we think they're needed. But I also value employees' time off. I know, and so to schedule meetings to discuss things that can be sent over emails, I do value their time off. So we may not hold as many formal meetings, but we discuss a lot of things through emails. So I think the pressing things are to continue to maintain our officers' health, to make sure they need the things they need. We have an employee assistance program that we can offer employees. And we also, after critical incidents, and we just had one recently, I know my opponent was there, where there was a horrific crash on County Road 18 where a grandmother and two children were killed. And that's very hard on the officers too that go there. So we held a critical incident debriefing. We brought a team of experts in, and we don't make that mandatory, but we allow our officers to come in and talk about things if they want to, and that their employee health is very important to us.
Thank you. And Steve, what is the number one most pressing issue facing the Goodhue County Attorney's Department?
Well, I think overall in the big picture, the number one issue facing the county attorney's office always has to be public safety and how we support our law enforcement partners in keeping the public safe. Smaller than that is something I alluded to before, and that's our issue facing with drug addiction and drug abuse in our community and how that impacts everything that we do in the county. On top of that, another issue that we're facing at the county attorney's level, and specifically within our office, would be the rising level of caseload that we have and the number of, and how fast some of our crime rates are increasing and our caseloads are increasing. I've been doing drug prosecutions now for well over a decade. And just within the last 4 years, we've had an increase in referrals for felony drug prosecutions of over 400%. So we're dealing with rising issues with regard to our prosecutions, and the resources that we have to allocate to that is going to be challenging going forward. I'm hoping that, again, some of these initiatives that we're undergoing, such as the drug court initiative, will help with all that.
Thank you. This question is for all three of you, and we will begin with Paul. What is the role of law enforcement when responding to homeless people in this county?
Well, I think we need to, that's a very difficult topic.
Thank you.
There's some people that choose to live that way. As much as we offer to help them, they do choose to not want any help. And we had a call just this morning that I responded to where there was a gentleman, that was clearly suffering from a mental illness. He had nowhere to stay. He was in a bathroom out in the county. And, we need to try to find a place for them to be, but it's getting extremely difficult to find places. And I think homeless people and mental illness, I think a lot of that goes together. It is extremely difficult for us to find places, because they're full, to take people with mental illnesses or that are homeless. In the case this morning, he ultimately wanted to go back to Hennepin County, where he came from, and we were going to get him a train ticket, but the train doesn't come in until 9 o'clock tonight. We had one of our transport deputies that was going to Hennepin County, and we took the gentleman, we took him back to Minneapolis, where he had a room and where he had his medication, and he left without that. He came back down here to see his brother, and his brother wasn't here. So we reached out to, and this is just a simple case, but we reached out and did that.
Thank you. Steve?
Repeat the question again.
Of course. What is the role of law enforcement, and I guess this person had in mind the role of the county attorney, when responding to homeless people in this county?
Our office doesn't really have a direct role in that response. We are more of a supportive role in that response. And that would be in our role in support of Health and Human Services and law enforcement officers. And also, I guess, with regard to any policies that the county board may enact with regard to addressing the homeless population or homeless situation in our county, we would help them as well, try to adopt policies that are enforceable and legal.
Thank you. Marty?
Well, I'm going to agree with Paul on this. Homelessness, in my experience, does lend itself to that person having a mental illness. When we respond, of course, we're tasked with making sure this person is safe. That's our first and foremost issue. If they're in harm's way, we have to do something to make them safe. A lot of times, we will take them up, pick them up on a 72-hour hold, which we have that right as law enforcement personnel. But that ends when we get them to the hospital, and then that's a whole other issue with finding places for these people to stay. I've witnessed firsthand many times people sitting in a 10-by-10 room without a window or door or a TV for up to 3 or 4 days. And they've told me this. They said, Marty, if I wasn't crazy before I got here, I'm crazy right now, because they had nowhere to go. The hospital had nowhere to take them. And I mean, it's a drain on the department. It's a drain on the hospitals. So it's a bigger issue than just law enforcement at this point, in my opinion. We're personally taking people to Hibbing, East Grand Forks, all the time. I mean, 2 or 3 times a week for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for all three, and we will begin with you, Marty. What has been your most challenging experience you have faced, and how did you handle it?
Boy, over 30 years, I've had a lot of challenging experiences. And to narrow it down to one, I don't know that I could. I guess I could. It's kind of morbid, but and you have to deal with people at their lowest part of their lives, namely death of a child, possibly. I'm generalizing now, but I've been there many, many times. I was a medical examiner investigator for 8 years as well. But when you have to take a child out of a dead child out of a parent's arms, I would say that would be my most challenging issue that I had to do. And you do that by, again, building a relationship with those people, treating them with respect, giving them time to grieve. And I do that. I mean, that is extreme, and I'm sorry for bringing it up, but that's reality, and that's what we deal with. But when you take that general principle to any situation, a jumper on the bridge, I've done that more than once. You treat people with respect, and that's how I've gotten through in 30 years with very good outcomes, and I'm proud of that.
Thank you. Paul?
I have to agree, to find one challenging moment is difficult, because there's been quite a few, but I think the most challenging is death notifications. As supervisors, we've been involved in a lot. I don't want to say that I enjoy them, but I've been around long enough, and I've done enough that there are times that I want to do them. I recall a time I had to make one to a lady. She was about 80 years old, and her son had been killed in a motorcycle accident in Wisconsin. And it was about 8 o'clock at night, and I went in. And one thing when you do these notifications, most people know, they see the look on your face already, so they know why you're there. You just have to get it out almost immediately what happened, and then you just work with, the time that you have with them. But when I told this lady, she barely, it almost like it didn't faze her, so we sat at the table, and I spent a considerable amount of time there talking to her, and I'm going to run out of time, but in talking to her, she didn't want me to talk to any of her family or at night or anything, but her husband had been killed in an accident, and this was her third or fourth child that had been killed in an accident. So I just couldn't leave without, spending, I might have been there for an hour and a half talking to this lady till I felt comfortable that at least she had somebody to talk to for a while. She wouldn't take a minister and none of her family.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, there's been lots of challenging experiences in my career. I've argued in front of the Minnesota Supreme Court. That was a challenging experience. The Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals. And, you hear a lot now about secondary trauma. And we're in one of those professions where we're dealing with people in their worst moments when it comes to criminal prosecution. And I think some of the most challenging times that I've had in my professional career are talking to victims of crime and helping them navigate the criminal process, trying to make sure that they feel respected in that process, trying to make sure that they feel heard in that process. And oftentimes, outcomes are not always the way people want them. And that's a challenge as well, explaining how that process works and how sometimes we don't have control over the ultimate decisions by courts. But I think, just dealing with people who are hurting on a daily basis, which is what we do in our job, similar to what law enforcement does, that's a challenge. And I think the one way I personally deal with that is by trying to stay healthy and exercising.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This question is for the sheriff office, and we will begin with you, Paul. What role does law enforcement have in sexual violence prevention?
Well, I think the way to try to prevent it is through education. And that starts with, especially now with cell phones, there's in the computer world that we have, we need to educate our children especially about how dangerous it is in communicating with people that they don't know. They may think they know this person, but they don't. And because there are so many predators on the internet or going through phones trying to get our children to meet with them, we just have to time and time again, try to educate our children about not having any communications with people they don't know on any type of electronic device.
Thank you. Marty?
Well, we have at least in Red Wing, we have a very good relationship with our high school. And where that education comes, namely it's from the physical education and health instructors. But we need to be involved in that, probably more than we are. They do a nice job of educating our children. But I don't know if they get into any of the consequences or what happens long term when this does happen. And we all have to be on the same page. We all have to work together to protect our children. And that does come in the classroom. We can't physically do it out on the street, maybe one-on-one, but that's not effective a lot of times. So we have to have that relationship with our schools. And I think we do. And the county has school resource officers that can facilitate that as well.
Thank you. Steve, do you want to address that?
Well, we as an office, we do a lot of outreach to the schools and communities. So we do send attorneys out to talk to groups about how to protect themselves from crime. And also we talk to the students about similar things. So that we do a little bit of that, and that's something that I think we would also want to do more of going forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This will be our last question before we open it up for your closing statements, and it is for the county attorney's office. The Red Wing paper reported last spring about a case involving child pornography that was not charged for almost 3 years, even though there was a confession. What will you do to make sure cases are being investigated and charged in a timely way? And secondly, is this a question of resources, priorities, or something else?
I did read that article in the paper. I actually just read it recently because I wasn't aware of that until someone brought it to my attention here recently. That is, in my mind, a case that's an anomaly. And initially, it's inappropriate for me to talk about cases that are ongoing, and that case is continuing to be ongoing. But as a general issue, I think that is probably an anomaly, and I don't know the reasons for why that was delayed, why that charging took that long, and there's lots of reasons why cases don't get charged right away. A lot of those reasons don't involve our office. So I think my initial response is that would be something we'd have to investigate to see what the problems were or what the issues were. And maybe there weren't any problems. There's some assumptions in that question I think that may not be true. So we'd have to look at that and see what the reasons were for it. And if it was something that we need to correct, then obviously we would want to address that and correct it. But again, I think that's an anomaly. Our office processes a large amount of cases every year, and we do it in a timely fashion. We have people in custody every morning when we come into work. We have a number of people in custody, anywhere from 3 to 15 people can be in custody, and we have to charge those cases out immediately. And we do that, and we get those done. And when cases come into our door, they're referred to us from law enforcement, and then we evaluate them. And it's my belief that we do charge cases out in a timely fashion. And again, we would have to look into the reasons for that one to see if there was an issue and how to correct that.
Thank you. Well, I think we have time for one more question, if that's all right. Thank you. This is for the sheriff office. Budgeting is a very important part of being the county sheriff. What experience do you bring to the budgeting process? And we'll begin with you, Marty.
Thank you. If you remember my opening statement, I said I had 5 children. Budgets are not rocket science, and I'm going to throw this out right away to former Sheriff Scott McNerlin. One of the best things he did almost immediately when he was elected was to ask the county board to give him an accountant, because he and I sat here 8 years ago and both agreed that we went to school for law enforcement, not accounting. And the gal that they got in there has been remarkable. They work as a team to do a budget. It's not a one-person decision. We need to work, we need to ask everybody thoughts, input. We need to have a complete audit of the budget. Quite frankly, folks, that $12.7 million budget's 80% cars, insurance, wages. There's not a lot of wiggle room, but what there is, I'm going to make sure I prioritize that because budgeting is about priorities. Thank you.
Paul?
Well, as I said earlier, our budget is right around that. It was a little under 12 million this year. It's a little over 13 million, I think, for next year. As it sits right now, the board could cut some of that. We do have a full-time accountant, and she is wonderful at our office. The sheriff, the chief deputy, we sit down on almost a daily basis and talk about our budgets. We have a capital plan. We have 7 budgets in the sheriff's office that pertain to each of the jail. We have one for dispatch. We have one for our EOC, patrol, boat and water. We also have a capital budget. And what we do with our capital budget is we sit down and we figure that out for a 3-year period. And capital is big purchases, vehicles, our equipment for the Water Patrol Division, ballistic vests, just some of the things that need to be replaced. And we put a replacement time on that. And so what we do is we sit down every so often and we look, can we push this out a little bit longer? And we do that lots of times. We put a lot of effort into our budget. Again, we talk about it almost on a daily basis. Last year we came in $230,000 under our budget. But we do try to get the things that we feel are necessary. And we do, I don't want to say we fight with the county board, but we, we stand our ground with the things we think we need.
Thank you. Marty?
Closing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for keeping track of me. All right, now we are ready for our closing comments, and of course, we agreed we'd do it in reverse order that we did for the opening. So we will start with you, Steve, with your closing comments. Thank you.
And thank you again for having me, and thanks to all of you for being here today and listening to us answer these questions. I believe my experience and leadership and involvement in a wide range of issues affecting county government has prepared me well for the challenges of this office. I am committed to serving the citizens of Goodhue County to the best of my ability, and I will work hard every day to earn your trust and confidence. Thank you again for listening, and I would appreciate your vote in November. Thanks.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. You asked some good questions. You asked some tough questions, but they're important questions. And again, I've spent my entire career with the Sheriff's Office. I've worn that uniform proudly during that time. And we do a good job there. But, I've been part of the administration. I think that's important for the next sheriff to have administrative experience, to working with budgets, working with all the other county departments. I work with the county attorney's office. I work with administration. I work with human resources. I work with land use management. We do that on a weekly basis. I've attended county board meetings for the past 4 years. We also get out and we attend, in March, the townships have their annual elections, and we attend all those meetings. There's 21 townships in the county, and between the administration staff, we use a few deputies because there's so many, but we attend these meetings and when we talk to our people. So we know the concerns out there. I know the concerns out there, and I look forward to being your sheriff, addressing any concerns that you have, and bringing the 33 years experience working in all the divisions that I have to the table to continue running our sheriff's office at a high functioning level. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty?
Thank you. I think we all agree that change can be good at times, and I think this year, I think the change could be welcomed, and we can do some good things with our department. You guys saw both Paul and I talk about part of our career that we don't like to talk about a lot of times. But what I'm passionate about is when we have a new officer or new deputy, want to be a law enforcement officer in these times, God bless them, because this is not an easy job. Paul will probably agree with me, and I know my wife will agree with me. I am not the same person I was 30 years ago when I started this job. And that's just because of the job. What we see, what we do, how we deal with it. I want to help the people, the new people that are just starting, be able to deal with some of these issues. Unlike I wasn't given that opportunity. We are supposed to have tough skin, and quite frankly, we are all human, and we need help too. I think I fared the storm pretty well, but I want to make sure our guys are almost the same person they were when they started 30 years ago, because it takes a toll on the body, on the mind, on the spirit. And I'm here to tell you that I'm going to help our young people be the best officers they can be, and I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you. And we would like to thank Marty Kelly and Paul Gielau, candidates for County Sheriff, and Steve O'Keefe, candidate for County Attorney, for their participation in tonight's forum. And now there will be a 10-minute break so that we can set up for the House District 21A forum that follows immediately. But first, let's show our appreciation with a round of applause.